Speaking of passing budgets, let's talk to Congressman John Rose. Obviously, John makes himself available to the listeners of Middle Tennessee quite often and the listeners of his district, and we appreciate that. And he is here to talk about the activities happening yesterday in the House of Representatives and where we move from here. John, thank you for being on with us. Good afternoon. Did I do that correctly? Are we up? Yeah? Okay, there we go. Hey, John, good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Matt. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. We always appreciate your perspective. And speaking of, give us your perspective of the vote yesterday and your decision-making behind your vote not to vacate the chair.
So, my decision is I voted against the motion to vacate. We have a very slim majority in the House, that is, Republicans do. I feel like we've been making progress under the leadership of Kevin McCarthy. Unlike the experience that some expressed, he has never lied to me. I've had a good relationship with him, and I felt like he was leading the conference in the right direction, leading the House in the right direction. I feel like the accomplishments that we had achieved throughout the year were all headed in the right direction. It took us decades to get in the mess that we're in now. And, I think you have to have the perspective and patience to know that you can't jump out of the hole that we've dug in one fell swoop. You've got to take it on step at a time. And I felt like we were moving in that right direction. And I didn't think it made sense to take out our general in the middle of the battle. As you've pointed out on the show today, we passed this continuing resolution over the weekend, giving us 45 more days, and we didn't need this interruption, frankly. And, I felt like leadership, both Speaker McCarthy and the Majority Leader Steve Scalise had given us a calendar, and, the appropriations subcommittees had been working diligently all year to get those appropriations bills before us. We haven't done this in a long time. The House, that is, hasn't done this in a long time to pass these things in regular order and get it done on time. And so you don't have the muscle memory. It's like rebuilding a team that hasn't been used to winning, and so you have to kind of work your way to that. And I felt like we were moving in the right direction. I felt like Leader McCarthy, Speaker McCarthy, had taken us in a good direction, and I felt like he deserved to stay in the battle, and particularly in the heat of the battle, because I do fear what you're saying is, it is a tall order to finish this all, even in the 45 days. It could be done, but we have to remember that we only control one half of Congress, and whether we can get all of our work done and the Senate can get their work done, and we can come to agreement with the Senate on appropriations bills that the president will sign, that's a pretty tall order, and we didn't need this interruption, in my view.
So is that the reasoning behind the recess? I've not heard really a good reason behind why you would leave for 6 weeks during the August recess when you still had the appropriations work to be done. And I'm not coming at you, John, when I say this, but is that the reasoning behind it, that you felt like you had the time and simply did not have the time to get it done through regular order?
Well, so you ask a good question, and I am frustrated, as are many, about the fact that we came home at the end of July and didn't stay in Washington and work. And obviously, hindsight being 2020, we should have all been screaming about that. I will tell you, I was there, and I didn't hear those voices. Some of them that are wanting to look back now and cast blame. I didn't hear. I was at all those conference meetings. Someone may have said it, but they certainly weren't saying it as loudly as they seem to be saying it now. Now, in retrospect, looking back, we should have stayed there until we got the job done and pushed through. And that's easy to see now. And it should have been easy to see then. But, we were making good progress throughout June and July. Now, some have raised the issue of why did we not get an earlier start on this? And that's a fair question, but I think we do have to keep it in the context of, we had a new majority starting early in the year. We had this debt ceiling issue that occupied a lot of time. The appropriations committees were laboring without a clear direction of what they had to write the bills to, in terms of where the previous year was going to end up until that debt ceiling was set and the top line spending numbers were there. And so that slowed things down a little. And, there's limited throughput capacity. Congress can meet, we can meet around the clock, but there's a whole team of people that are working to commit all that to writing and research and get the answers to the questions. And every time an amendment comes up, you have to kind of work back through that. And so we have to keep all that in mind, that it's not just as easy as us passing laws. A lot of times I think members of Congress make this mistake that just because we pass a law, that means it can all happen immediately. That's, as you know, not the way it works. And so, I think we've made good progress this year. I think the Speaker was committed to doing the individual appropriations bills. We also have to remember, though, that since this process was put in place by law back in 1974, it's only been completed on time 4 times, and the last time it was done was 1996. So institutionally, there hasn't been a lot of buy-in to this whole process, and maybe that's something that we should take a look at, frankly. Perhaps the process that we've set out in front of us is maybe not the right process in terms of at least the recent history of the last 40 years of being able to complete it in a timely fashion.
Well, John, you and I have a good relationship, and I think you're the right man for the job in your district to represent Middle Tennessee. I say that to say this. What y'all have done a good job of in Congress is spending money that we don't have. I mean,
absolutely.
Since 2008, in 2012, the debt was $15 trillion. And today it's $33.5 trillion. And so when Kevin McCarthy made concessions in January to get the votes necessary to become House Speaker, part of those concessions was, one, allowing a singular member to bring up a motion to vacate, which I'm, sure that some might regret at this point, and that might change down the road. But two, it was an agreement to have these appropriations bills passed through the House by the end of the fiscal year. He did not live up to that commitment. And so, I understand, it's not you necessarily. You're just observing the goings on and reporting back to Middle Tennessee. But I understand those who are frustrated, like your fellow colleague, Tim Burchett, who we just had on, who say, look, we didn't get the job done. And at some point we have to get the job done, considering the amount of debt that we owe. You and I have had these discussions many, many times over the years.
Sure, and I share the view that the debt is the number one challenge facing the country. Anyone who's heard me speak for the last 5 years knows I talk about this as one of the 3 biggest challenges, and it is the biggest of the 3. And so we have to get that under control. We have to have a orderly appropriations process if we have any chance of getting that under control. But I think you also have to keep in mind the dynamics of Congress. It's 435 people. And you have to get 218 in the current numbers, 216 to pass anything. And, the Republicans have a 4-seat, if everyone's there, have a 4-seat majority. It's a team sport, and you've got to, it's herding cats. All these folks have egos and want to move in their own direction. And so it's not an easy job. And I think what McCarthy committed to was to try to get it done. I think he put in place a lot of the procedures and processes to help us get it done. At the end of the day, we didn't get there by the time that we all would have hoped that we could. I think there's blame to go around for that. But we did make extraordinary progress. The House passed over 70% of the discretionary spending is represented in the bills that we did get done with real cuts. And then, last week, that is, we had a temporary CR, continuing resolution, is what some people call it. I would have called it a temporary spending plan because it was unlike anything Congress has ever passed in terms of temporary funding. It would have made the real cuts that we all wanted to see made. Some of the discretionary budget cut by as much as 28%. It also dealt with the border. It also put in place a debt commission to really take on a bipartisan basis the non-discretionary or the so-called permanent spending that represents 75% of the federal government spending, by the way. And so I think there was a lot to be for there. And unfortunately, some in our conference let perfect be the enemy of really good. In fact, not just really good, the best ever. And then on Saturday, we had to swallow a essentially what some people call a clean continuing resolution that continued the bloated spending levels that were given to us by Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. And so, you want to move in the right direction. It was a giant step in the right direction. It's unfortunate that we couldn't get there. We couldn't get the leverage that might have gotten the Senate and the president there. And so then Saturday, we ended up taking a vote that was much less favorable for the country.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to belabor it because, I mean, it is what it is. And I want to ask you about moving forward, what you see over the next 45 days or so. But I don't understand for the life of me. I understand it's a complex appropriations process. I don't understand for the life of me what's so difficult about understanding that September 30th is the last day of the fiscal year.
Sure, I agree completely. I think you're exactly right, Matt. We should work to that, and we should begin the year working to that.
Well, agreed on that. So I guess Patrick McHenry becomes the Speaker pro tem. Was it Representative McHenry that made the decision to break for a week? Because that's got a lot of Middle Tennessee scratching our head. I mean, this is a big deal. This deal has been I mean, obviously we don't have the budgets in place, the appropriations bills in place. You got a 45-day stopgap. People have disagreed with that. Now we don't have a speaker. So now we got to deal with the speaker first before we deal with any of this other very important stuff second. Yet you guys are off for a week. What's the deal?
Yeah, and I haven't spoken to Speaker Pro Tem McHenry about why he elected to push it out that far. I agree. Time is of the essence here. My assumption is that amid the chaos of losing the speaker and having to, sort through and frankly giving the members a chance that wanted to step forward and offer themselves, as a candidate for speaker, giving them a chance to organize that effort and giving the conference time to weigh the options and to consider whether or not any of these candidates can pull together the conference. So remember, again, the conference is going to elect someone to be the candidate for speaker, but then that person is going to face the same challenge that McCarthy faced back in January, is they've got to go to the floor and they've got to get the votes to get elected speaker. And in the current environment, that means they have to get virtually all the Republicans to vote for them. The Democrats are not going to help. They obviously proved that yesterday. They want to trip us and trip up the country at every turn, going so far as to pull fire alarms, apparently, to slow things down. And so you saw them slow walking their voting yesterday. So I think it matters a lot in terms of the Republican majority that the voters gave us, being able to deliver the conservative leadership that they asked us to deliver. It matters a lot that we get our act together. And so, McHenry made the judgment that period of time was needed. I would have liked to see us move faster, but it is the process we have. So it's unfortunate we're going to lose a week of that 45 days that we need to be getting this work done. And it is a tall order. I mean, you've talked about it, that we can get the rest of the appropriations bills through, the other, say, 28% of the spending that hasn't yet been dealt with by the House. The Senate hasn't passed the first bill.
A lot of response and concern by you on the super text line. We'll talk about that. And does John have a leader in the clubhouse in terms of who will be the next speaker? We'll talk with the Congressman Rose about that in just a moment. 121.
The Chris Hand Show, weekdays at 9.
Over 80% of the country response to the emergency alert on the super text line is delicious. 6447, I'm disappointed the zombie apocalypse did not start. 3076, OMG, I was agreeing with all of y'all all day, then some alert came on my cell phone, now I disagree with everything you say. That's just two, there's a lot of them. A lot of people saying they've turned into zombies based on the alert. I appreciate Congressman Rose for being able to stick around for a little while longer. And John, once again, look, I'm not here to turn friends into enemies, and I believe you're a friend of the 6th Congressional District and a friend of the state of Tennessee. But at least based on the interaction that I've got going on right now, This is not being received well in terms of the dysfunction that's happening. A lot of people believe that we need some new leadership, and I'll just leave your vote where it is and leave your decision-making process as stated by you. Let's move forward and ask this question. Do you have a candidate that you believe you can believe in? I know that Steve Scalise has offered his name. I know Jim Jordan's offered his name. Are those two individuals that you could potentially get behind?
I'm going to listen to all the candidates and give them a chance to make their case. This is a big job, and it's, just like I was talking about Congress not having the muscle memory to do some of the stuff that we're trying to do. And so we're having to kind of learn as we go, reestablish that pattern of behavior to get us to the right answer. The same is going to be true for whoever the next leader is. It's a big job. It's a big job just leading the members, but then leading the institution and helping to organize the conference and to be successful at the ballot box politically with the next year's elections coming up. Those are big, tall orders, and I'm gonna want to ask the tough questions. I think other members will. I think that this time will end up being useful to try to winnow down the candidates and get to the right person to lead the House and ultimately to lead half of Congress and hopefully get us to the budget cutting, the fiscal responsibility, and the ending of woke policies and the getting the border under control, answering the Democrats and the progressives who want to take this country off the cliff. I think all of that has to be decided, and so I'm going to listen to each candidate. Hopefully we will find someone that not only can satisfy me, but that can pull together, the 222 members of the Republican conference and get us a majority that can actually do what the American people and people right here in Middle Tennessee, want to see us do.
If our super text line is any indication, in the last couple of minutes that we have been speaking, many people who are saying that they're from the 6th District have offered their opinions on this, and it's probably about a 2-to-1 split. They were ready for McCarthy to go versus believed that it was the right call to give him another opportunity to see some appropriations bills. What is your message to the 6th Congressional District, specifically to your vote yesterday, and what you hope to accomplish moving forward in this window, this narrow window that we have to try to get the budget appropriated?
Sure. So, I think we could look in the rearview mirror and think about what has happened, but at this point it is what it is. And so we've got to figure out how to move forward and keep accomplishing the mission that the people of the 6th District sent me to Washington to do, which is to take our values to Washington and get Washington out of Tennessee. And to do that, we've got to get the majority, the Republican majority has to be able to legislate, and we need a good leader to get that done. And so we're going to try to find that leader as quickly as we can and get back on track of passing conservative legislation, including getting a conservative, budget for this year put in place that is responsible and, like our Tennessee legislature, try to get us to the place where we can live within our means. But another message I would have, Matt, for everyone listening is we all have gotten addicted. That is, the American people have gotten addicted to this deficit spending. And, we're going to all have to take a haircut and tighten our belts. And, so I would say to Tennesseans, it's going to touch us all. The government is spending, the deficit this year is going to be more than all discretionary spending combined. So that should tell everyone listening what's got to happen. It's going to have to be dramatic to get this country back with, living within its means. And we've got to grow the economy, too, frankly, which is something that we haven't even really been talking about, is how the administration is deterring the growth of the American economy.
John, thank you for your time today. We appreciate your availability to the members of the 6th Congressional, or the people of the 6th Congressional District and all throughout Middle Tennessee, and we'll talk again very soon. Take care.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to represent the folks of Tennessee. Thanks for having me on.